Welcome to another edition to Talking with WIT, Kevin and Son, and the people you should know. This episode is brought to you by RMK Productions and the 10 United Podcast Network. Through the power of your story, our mission is to uplift, share the power of your voice, inspire, share stories and experience and perspectives using the framework of teaching, learning, and modeling. Our purpose is very simple. We create hope, helping other people every single day. Now, this is a very special edition, so I'm going to tell you a little something. Whatever your objective is, people like my guests, they either create a framework around their day-to-day life that either enhances their life or sometimes they pour into others. Today's podcast will reveal the secret of a highly effective life. Today's guest will share not only his story with you, but simple, doable steps on how he turned a small idea into a next level brand and to the next level speaker. I'm telling you, you're talking about a star in the making. Oh man, let me tell you. Okay, you can probably Google this. He's a five times TEDx speaker. He's a closet comedian, funny as crap. I don't know if he'll make you laugh today. He's an emerging entrepreneur. Wall Street Journal and USA Today says he's a best-selling author. By my standards, I'm going to list him one day as a friend. I'm not going to tell him because I heard your podcast when you called those people out. He is the GOAT of podcasting. He's one of the top three that came out when no one was listening to podcasting. He has his own radio show that says, let's do influencing. Talk about a person that loves to talk. Our guest has interviewed and had conversation with over 7,500 named people and some nameless people like me. Today's guest, he will share his story, talk about turning the dream and his lifestyle into an all-around career. I will share his message behind his best-selling book, his new book, The Enlightened Passenger. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce Mr. Corey Poirier. How you doing, Mr. Corey?
Better now. Wow.
Better now.
Thank you so much for having me on. And I have to say, I feel like you are Mr. Humble. So I have to, call you out on that. You're very humble. So I wanted to put that out into the world. And I have to ask you, I've been curious, where did the name of your podcast come from? I'm sorry to jump right into that, but I wanted to ask you that before.
Well, believe it or not, this is the reason why we have people that on this show we should know, because this is like being at a family reunion having this conversation. Believe it or not, I made the big mistake. You know how like you have an idea and you want to tell everyone? I had gotten up one morning, this is during the pandemic, and I have registered the name Talking with Kevin, all right, because I was about to launch my first book. Well, what happened was someone called me in and says, look, you got to co-host this show on Clubhouse. And I told someone, they asked me what I was doing. I told them what I was doing. And some person, this is where integrity lies in, went back and realized that I had only put my domain name and my shopping cart and had not paid for it. Turned around after I gotten off Clubhouse, found out someone had registered their name, was asking for money. So I said, you know something? I live with a TBI. I don't know if you know that is traumatic brain injury. So my memory, my stress level, whatever, every single day, my life is fragmented. If I make mistakes, what the hell? I just laugh at myself. So I said, you know something? I got a sharp wit. I'm a little funny. I'm a little sarcastic. So it became Talking with Kevin. And because my son is a chef in New York and was out of a job, he became my co-host. And when we came out of pandemic, long story short, he went back to work. And if you know, I record every Monday. So that's about it. And then the logo is because I want to unite people. So no matter where you come from, no matter what your skin color is, no matter what your preference in life and how you wake up in the morning or who you wake up in, I want to bring people together. So my grandfather always said, reach one, teach one. So the lessons in life I learned playing high school football. So that's how it came about. I wish I could have made it shorter, but I took up 3 minutes of your interview. But I will make it up because, if it runs long, what the heck? Someone's going to listen to Corey.
I mean, I've been wondering about that anyway, so I don't think you took up my time because it was a question I've been curious about, and I was just as equally curious about the son part. So you answer both at the same time. So awesome.
Yeah, I leave the seat open not only for my son to return because people that are chefs, they when they're off and they're sleeping because they work crazy hours. I have a wonderful son, so I do miss him. And my son has taught me some life lessons when we were first doing interviews. So I struggle with um, talking about Kevin. And my son told me, and I still use this advice. He said, my mistakes are most people's dreams. And so he says, you got to go ahead and when people ask you what you do, is tell them what you do. I always thought it was, some people interpret it as bragging, but enough about me. But I do know I have 100 people that are in my circle of friends. And I always say that I have people that have a high call to action. These are people that know how to get shit done. And please forgive my French, and you can spell it any way you want to, but I said it the way I meant it. And I know that you have not cursed me out for sending you little notes first thing in the morning. I know I'm in the US, you're in Canada. I wake up every single morning and I write the first thought that came to my head. I hope you don't hate me, Corey.
No, I don't at all. No, I mean, it's one of those great things you don't expect to get, and it turns into be like every now and then, there's one that I just kind of jump into and it pulls me in and, helps me kickstart the day. So yeah, I mean, yeah, happy to receive.
All right. Well, I'm hoping that one day in our next 3 or 4 interviews, because your life has so many stories, I can't get it in 45 minutes. I'm hoping one day I can actually list you as a friend. So I'm going to tell you, I have an open door policy. If you ever in the Philadelphia area, I would be offended if you stayed in a hotel. My door is open. So with that said, the one quote that I sent you the other day, it says, happiness is something that isn't something you search for. Happiness is something you carry around with you. I have not seen one interview. I have not had one conversation with you that I didn't see all 32 teeth. What makes you happy, Corey?
It's funny you say that because if you believe in synchronicity, I find this fascinating because I did an interview today with a gentleman whose name is Dr. Tony Nader, and he's launching his new book. I think it's called Consciousness is All That There Is, something like that. And I asked him about happiness, and I didn't notice how often I was smiling, or at least grinning to some degree. And he said, well, he said, basically, I can tell by looking at you that you're happy because of how often you're smiling and how you're smiling without realizing you're smiling. So it's interesting you asked me about this just today because I asked him about happiness because I think it's such a big area and everybody wants it. But I'm curious, and I was curious with him, is there a way to, I guess, get it in a bliss way that it stays with you forever type thing? So that, we could dive into what he said, but we don't have to. But to answer your question more directly, for me personally, there's a few things that I think have led to me becoming a happy/happier person. I tell people often that I take vitamin P every day, and vitamin P, it stands for passion and or purpose. You can pick whichever P or both, but basically every day I wake up feeling a sense of purpose. And because of that, I wake up, I think without even necessarily saying it to myself all the time, grateful that I get to do it another day. Like, how lucky and fortunate am I that I get to wake up and be happy with what I do every day, knowing how many people dread when they wake up what they have to do every day. And, and then to be born in North America where I kind of, where I've already had privileges that other people in the world don't have. So I think one side is perspective, but I didn't start that way. So I can't just say I was naturally like, oh, I should be grateful every day. I literally wasn't. I was unhappy. I battled hypochondria and generalized anxiety the anxiety was like 4.5, 5 years. And so something had to shift for me to have a smile on my face all the time now. And what that was, it started with that vitamin P. It goes back to what you referenced in passing about comedy. I got tricked into performing stand-up comedy one night, and I didn't plan to perform. I didn't know I was going to be performing. What happened is I went to a 2-week workshop about how to perform stand-up. Guy taught us. Next week, he said, you're going to fill the comedy club, and then we'll have a clinic, and we'll talk about what the comics did and what you liked. And we found out with 5 minutes notice we were the comics. And I went up and performed because I couldn't find an exit window in the bathroom. And I performed, and horribly, by the way, no laughs. But the next day I went to work and somebody said, did you meet someone? Because you have a different energy about you. And that was the first moment, Kevin, and I didn't know it at the time, but the first moment of me actually feeling the energy of I found a passion in my life. And that changed everything. And so I can tell you that I battled that anxiety for 4.5 years. Seemed like nobody had an answer for me as to what could be done about it. I went on a stand-up comedy stage, kept going back week after week, bombing horribly, no laughs, but enjoying it. And within about a month and a half, roughly, if I remember correctly, the anxiety was gone, never to return. Hypochondria was gone, never to return. And like I said, that's why I say I took vitamin P after going on that stand-up stage. But I think that's what started my journey to happiness. And then there's probably a whole other answer in terms of what I keep doing to keep myself happy. But that's at least where it started. I mean, we can dive further if you want, but that's kind of why I'm happy.
I am definitely going to dive a little bit further than that. I'm going to go back to the smile and where the origin of my story came about. We share a mutual friend. We both sat at the table with a young man by the name of Les Brown. I have been with Les Brown from his good times and bad times, and I'm going to share a little story with you. When I first met Les, I was his personal trainer in New York at 350 East 79th Street. He was actually engaged to a young lady by the name of Gladys Knight. Some people may know her, leaving on the midnight train to Georgia. And I had him 5 days a week. Les was the first Black man to get his own talk show in New York. And you hear Les, he says no sooner than he got the show, he was the fastest one to exit that stage. But I knew him as Lester C. Brown. And every single morning I would train him. It was like pulling teeth every single morning to get him to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, to get him to do things, whatever. And I don't sleep because my brain is kind of wired differently. I'm in touch with the energy. So I write at night, I work at night, and I don't require sleep. That may sound strange to some people because people say you need 8 hours sleep, and I'm that one individual. But I ordered motivational tapes. At that time, motivation was a big thing. And one of the things that I liked about it, as the man had a smile. And that's the reason why when I met you, I said we had so many things in common. One, you look a lot like me. All right. People may not see the difference in there, but you look a lot like me. You have all 32 teeth and you smile like you're never going to lose them. And I gave Mr. Motivational Speaker Les Brown, one of the most successful Black speakers in the country, in the world, his own motivation tapes. And when he started laughing, I felt like the biggest fool in the world because I never realized that Les Brown was Leslie Calvin Brown. And I know you've sat beside him. So this is going to lead into one, you're going to be more successful than you ever realized because of that smile. Because most people walk around every single day offended by something, but it's hard to be offended or carry a bias when they meet Poirier. And I knew that when I first met you in the first conversation, I said, how do you talk to someone that has overcome some stuff? And that's the reason why when you talk about motivation, because you turn difficult times into easy times and you continue to battle those difficult times and make it easier. And that's what's called life. So you have two sons. You have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. All right. If I were to ask either one of your children, all right, that see you every day, that love you and adore you, if they were to repeat something they heard you say every single day in the house, what would your 7-year-old and your 4-year-old say that you say every single day?
So I'm embarrassed to say there's two sides. I mean, I know they don't hear me say this, but they see it, is that I live every day with passion. So that's the good, meaning they see every day. Like we asked, it was Father's Day, and my wife asked the kids, like, what does Daddy do for a living? And he said, the older one said, I think he bosses people around, which I don't at all. Like I have a team, but I'm the only one in the office. I don't know where he got that. But then he said, well, he makes his own rules. He works for himself. Like he just knows it's different than what he sees with other people. But he said, but he always seems to like doing it. He's always excited to do it. So I thought that was good what he sees me do. But if I had to think about what do I say on a daily basis, I don't think I say this as much anymore. But the one thing I said more often than I probably should have is you don't realize how good you have it. Because it's a different world right now. Like he thinks like everything, this is the older one. He thinks like everything you should be able to push a button and it should arrive at your door 1 minute later, and he's almost offended that it doesn't. So we try to show him that he does really have sort of a charmed life compared to other people. And I mean, the part I think that is kind of working as far as that goes is when we went to we were in San Diego a few months ago, and this is both kids, but basically one of the kids, the youngest one, we talked to this homeless person. My wife's in recovery, and every time we go to a city, like she goes up to a homeless person and says, you know, can I help you with something? Do you need any food, any money? Like she's just that person. And so anyway, but we went up and talked to this guy. And anyway, my youngest son said, sir, can I give you a hug, please? Anyway, and he went and hugged him. And Shelly said, I was inside the restaurant still. She said he had tears rolling down. She said, I bet you it's the first time he's been hugged in probably 4 years, 5 years. And so then my older son, whenever Shelly came and gave some shoes to a guy next door to where we're at right now, there's a lot of homeless people near the office. My son said, can we go back and give more of those? He didn't say homeless. He said more of those men some shoes. That felt really good. And so I feel like they're getting the drift that not everybody has it as good as they are. But if I thought about what did I say a little bit, I don't know if it's too often or not, but just that, you know, you really don't realize how good you have it, do you? And again, I think he understands it now, but yeah, that's probably the thing I said more often. But I think he sees how happy I am doing what I love and my attitude and stuff. I think that probably rings through even more than any words I said.
All right. I want to ask you this question because it's asked of me. The reason why, again, I'm going to say this because everything about you reminds me of me, and I'm a lot older than you. So I actually thought until I met you that I was an original. And then I met you and I realized that I don't have 30 years in front of me, but I have 30 years behind me that's chasing me. It just happens to be born in a Poirier, a little French type little twitch there, right there. You know, Poirier, like Macklemore. I always say Macklemore is black French. Irish is the first part, Mac, and Lamore is the second part. So you, in your previous interviews, you talk about being a hypochondriac. All right. One of the problems that we have in America, I don't know what it's like in Canada, mental illness or the stress of being a man is running rapid. Suicide rate amongst men, especially Black men, are at almost 70%, just because we're not finding our identity. As a man, as a father, based what you were taught and what was caught, because I know you grew up a lot like me. You know, the difference is my mother went one way, your father went another way. My grandparents raised me, you were raised by your mother. I don't know if anyone's ever asked you to talk a little bit deeper about the hypochondriac. Where did it begin? How did you recognize it? And how did you deal with it?
So I don't know that anybody's ever like went that much further into it. I think probably sometimes some guests are just kind of not, you know, I don't want to say blow it off, but just kind of like they don't know much about it. So like, oh, wow, that must have been hard. But then just let's move on. So I don't like when I think about it, a lot of people didn't kind of sort of push into it. Whenever so I know the exact day, and I think I have shared this, I'm sure, in an interview. I know the exact day that it started. Like literally, I can tell you where I was sitting. I can tell you the street address, everything, and it's a random place. Like it wasn't like I went there regularly. Well, sort of did, but not enough to know the address. I just know where it was because I used to have an office in the same building. But what it was is I went to a waiting room at the doctor's office. Now I had anxiety, so I was going to the walk-in clinic already a little bit too much, but I didn't necessarily think I had different things all the time. And I picked up a magazine. It might have been People magazine, but that part, the only part I'm not sure about is which magazine it was. And I started reading an article about Michael J. Fox. And I'm like, he has what now? Parkinson's. I've only heard that name once or twice before. Isn't that like an older person's thing? And then I started reading about Michael J. Fox, how at this point he was probably 30 something. I didn't realize until I got really into the article that he had been diagnosed with it at the end of doing Family Ties. So like literally when he was like, I think late 20s. And I started reading all the symptoms. Like it was his story about how it started. And wouldn't you know it, the next morning I had Parkinson's. So only the things I read about, I all of a sudden had a tremor. Never had a tremor before that in my life. Had a tremor. And I said, how did I not notice this before? It's wild what our mind can do to us. Where honestly, like Kevin, it's wild to me. I didn't actually know or notice that it was happening. Like I didn't notice that, wait a minute, I didn't have anything yesterday. Now I read about something and now I have the symptoms. Is there something that A, doesn't add up, or B, should add up in my head that, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. And so that started the journey. I was like, I'm sure that's what I have, just like him. And anyway, so I went through all the tests, and they put me through MRIs. And I remember they got me to do this to see if I could do that. And I couldn't. Like, I literally couldn't do it because he said he couldn't in the thing. And so I was like, I literally, like, it's amazing. My mind made me not be able to do them. And then the wild part is, once they finally put all the tests through, and I believe the system in the sense that I believed they would know if I'm sick or not. So once they put everything and said, no, you don't have Parkinson's, see ya. You know, and they're thinking, honestly, Kevin, most people walk away and then they're like, oh, great, I don't have Parkinson's, I'm all good. I walked away and I got home that night, MS. It must be MS. It has similar symptoms to Parkinson's. And then I went down that path for probably 2 months. MRI, every aspect of it. I mean, it was so bad. For those that would have heard of a barium enema, which is like, I don't know the best way to describe that.
You're a comedian, describe it.
Well, it's a colon examination where they squirt liquid up your colon. And basically what they didn't tell me is that you should take something to break it up when it comes back out. So turn it into cement coming back out. Well, I went through all of that. And I was on the floor crying, hitting my head on the floor. I finally went back to the doctor the next day, and they're like, oh, just take this. And it did, cleared it right up. But I was so crazy with this that I literally oh, I don't think they did their test properly. I got to go back and do it again. I was willing to put myself through that cement because I still didn't think they were right on my diagnosis. So the point of that is, that's when it started. And then, like I said, I went down the path of MS, and then they're like, no, that's not what it is. Okay, well, what else could it be? And I'm literally, I feel like I was searching on, what do you call it, MedMD, looking for new things it could be. Like, I was literally trying to figure out what could it be. So it started with the Michael J. Fox moment. Now, we could go deeper, and I don't even know if I'd have the answer as to why, though. You know, it couldn't have been just because I lifted up a magazine and started reading about it. Obviously, I already had anxiety. So did that tip it over? Or was it that, you could argue, is it that I didn't have enough attention? And by now bringing these things to myself, it gives me more attention. Was it because I was pessimistic and didn't know if I would make it? So this was my way of kind of validating what I thought could be true. That's the thing I don't know, is why it started. But I know the second it started, and I know how it started, and I know what happened as a result of it starting.
And how are you living with this today and trying not to pass it on to your two sons?
Well, this is the wild part. I don't live with it at all. Like, what happened was, I mentioned earlier, taking the vitamin P on that stand-up stage, it disappeared and never came back. Never again. I can watch stuff about documentary about Michael J. Fox now and not have any symptoms. I can read it and nothing. It went away. And the only difference that I can see that happened from one night to day was I found meaning in my life. That's why I believe Dr. Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, I believe it to be true. What he said is, after he got out of the Holocaust, he started teaching, instead of talk therapy, he started teaching, I think he created it called hypnotherapy. But the gist was helping people find meaning. And he said when he helped people find meaning, his patients, the mental health issues started disappearing, even without him giving them one thing to take or even talk therapy. I'm not saying that's the answer. I'm just saying that's what happened for me. And so for me personally, I don't have to deal with it because that changed everything. And I became the person that was glasses half empty to glasses half full. And I don't think ever went back. And so I hope that because my kids don't see me going through that, yes, it could be hereditary, but because they don't see me going through it, I think that at least lessens their chances. And because I did go through it, I can help them a little bit probably through it. I will say, though, nobody could have got through to me at the time. I have blinders on, this is what I have. And this is weird. The only time I ever remember watching a movie where I felt akin to somebody was a movie with Jason Bateman. I think it was called The Switch. It was him and Jennifer Aniston, and she was trying to have a baby, and he spilled the semen. So he put his own in place of it because he was drinking. He's just like, oh, I got to refill this. And so she didn't know that she had his baby, even though they were friends and he was in love with her. But she had the son, which she still didn't know was his. He finally knew it was. And they're at an aquarium standing next to each other. And he says to the kid, he goes, well, I'm a hypochondriac, so that's why I keep thinking those things. And the kid says, what's a hypochondriac? And he said, well, anytime, something to the effect of, anytime I hear about a disease, I develop the symptoms of a disease. And the kid looked up and said, wow, that's what I have. So when you said that about the kid, it's kind of funny because that's what it made me think of. Because in that case, they implied it's hereditary. I've never done the research even to find out if it's hereditary, because I know mental health issues can be. I just don't know if hypochondria is, and I think it seems like it might be a byproduct of other things that you have,
There
but I don't
probably
really know.
is. Probably is. And, 24 hours ago, that someone had read my book, Indispensable Games of X's and O's, and said they wanted to interview me. And they sent me a copy of the introduction. And the first thing they said that I was abandoned and that I had a father that was a loser and whatever. And I'm going, what book did you read? And I know everything that happens when we put ourselves out there is based on interpretation and perspective. So we do know in the position that you're in, and I like to stand and carry your luggage and be in that space or whatever. Success does breed success. However, success comes at a price. If you can search in the back of your mind, tell me, what did you have to give or to give up to gain the level of success that you have today?
Okay, so I mean, I'm going to give you the answer first, Kevin. That's like almost like the person in the job interview that's trying to pretend it's a bad thing, but also it sounds like a good thing. Like, what's your worst quality? I really care about my job and work too hard. That type of answer. But the first thing that popped in my head, I gotta always be like fully in the moment with intuition. The first thing that popped in my head when you said give up is I had to give up being lazy. I had to give up comfort, like the comfort of life is easy because I'm comfortable and I don't have to change anything. Now, today, I've learned that I'm uncomfortable being comfortable. I flipped the switch. I was comfortable being comfortable before. Now I'm uncomfortable being comfortable. Like, I don't like it if I'm too comfortable. But I had to give up comfort, like the idea that I could just take the easy path. Now, interestingly, you and I probably both know now it's not the easy path, but we think it is the easy path of just like, if I just, and I'm not knocking this, but if I just, stay at this job that in my case, I wasn't happy at, and I just show up at home at night every night and, cook on the barbecue, or watch TV or Netflix. It wasn't Netflix at the time. That's easy and comfortable. I had to give up that. I don't think it was a bad thing to give up at now, but at the time, the reason I say it this way, at the time, it felt like a lot to give up. Like, so on one hand, but again, like I said, that's almost the cop-out answer, because it's almost like the job interview where you say, well, I had to, my worst quality probably is that people love me and I work really hard. Whatever, of course, it's not a bad quality, or it shouldn't be. But if I look at what else that I've had to give up, I've had to give up relationships. Now, here's where every part of this makes it hard to answer, because now, knowing what I know, again, it was good. It was for the right reason. It worked out the way it was meant to, and I'm happy I had to give it up. But at the time when I was involved in, for example, starting my first business, and my girlfriend at the time didn't understand why we were eating ramen noodles, and not lobster, because if I was working the job I had just left, we'd be eating lobster for the short term, but always struggling. So meanwhile, I go into my own business and we're making less money. And so, that girlfriend, that relationship didn't work. And part of that's probably because to chase my path, I had to give that up. I had to give up again. So I go back to the comfort, what she felt comfortable was. So I think I've given up relationships. I think I've given up what I'll call like an easier path, because even though I love what I do, it does take work. It does involve stimulating your mind. It does take sacrifices, like I'm not going to watch TV all night tonight. By the way, I will say I'm different this way than some. I know some people think like TV is poison or a waste of time. I do have often shows that I've watched over and over on in the background when I'm working. I'm that person where I don't mind TV. But the funny part is I find I don't have time to watch new movies or new shows. So I find like I can watch something I've seen before because I don't need to pay attention to the plot. So I don't really watch TV, but TV is like my comfort background noise. And so I still put it on. I just don't invest a lot of time in it, and I don't have cable. But I still had to give up that, because as a younger kid, I loved movies. I loved TV, and I love that art form. Music, actually, here's a good one too. Music and comedy. We talked about comedy earlier. So I was performing stand-up. I performed 700 shows over 9 years. And I don't know how many music shows I performed, but a lot. put out CDs. My last CD came out in 2014, and I put out those CDs for them, toured, had music, on YouTube and some on the radio. And then I walked away and said, okay, I can't do all three. I can't be a speaker, comedian, and musician. I technically could have, but what I found is people didn't take me serious as a speaker because of the other two. So that was, I'll call it a sacrifice, because the music was doing well. I was getting paid gigs, so I was getting paid to play music, which most musicians struggle with. I was actually finally getting there. The comedy, I was getting paid. I was producing my own shows, $300 or $400 in a night for comedy, which again is big money in comedy. And
Right.
that stuff was all working, and I had to give that up. So those are some sacrifices that kind of come top to mind.
Well, I'm going to give you some advice. I'm a little older than you, and
Okay.
I'm going to give you some advice because I know people that are lesser are impressed by numbers. All right. But I will tell you, when you get to my age, you'll stop counting the numbers and you'll stay with the number one. All right. Because you're only original one time, not the 700 or 7,000 times someone has been introduced to you. You always meet one person at a time. You always make a difference of one person at a time. Stop aging yourself. All right. And do you know what a polymath is?
I do. Oh, well, correct that. I know the word, and as soon as you say it, I know it. Like I've heard it many times. And I don't know why it's not coming to my head.
All right. I'm going to give you a title. You're a gift. Anytime God gives an individual multiple talents and whatever, he wants you to go out there and share those multiple talents. Just because other people don't have the ability to make people laugh, just the reason or people don't have their ability in order to move people from the inside to the out. That's what music does. It touches your soul, and then it reaches your heart and creates a conversation. And just because God has given you a platform in order to deliver the message that he is transferring through you, don't belittle your story. Go ahead and tell your story. Be all that you can be. Listen to this. You got someone telling a motivator how to be motivated. Listen to this. Stop it, Kevin. Stop it.
No, I appreciate it.
Let me ask you this, since we're on this topic. All right. And this broke my heart. A couple of days ago, I read an article with the actor named by the name of Jim Carrey. He says, what do you do when all of your dreams come true? He says, what do you have left? And so what I know is our lives aren't shaped by the plans we make. Our lives are shaped by how we act when our pet plans fall through. What is the one thing that you have not finished in your life that you'd like to get done?
Wow. I mean, I have to say there's probably more than one, which I'm happy with, because I do like having those things, those dreams to keep chasing. I think Jim Carrey, it's been interesting in recent years to watch sort of how insightful he's become. And, one of the quotes I heard him say, because some of these quotes are attributed to people, but not them. But one of the quotes by Jim Carrey I heard him say was, I wish that every person could get the $1 million and the fame they want, so that they could realize it's not what life is about. And it's wild. Like, it's weird to think that Jim Carrey is eventually becoming a voice of reason. But, going back to like, what do you got? Pet Cemetery, because that was on the TV the other day.
Right.
But for me, there's different ones. And I struggle now because some of them are fleeting, in the sense that, like, they're outward achievements that now I know in my life aren't, the best way I can say it is, it's not a huge deal or thing if it ever comes true or doesn't. It doesn't make me a different person. It doesn't change me. But one of the things that I've had on my kind of list, which I haven't really pushed and pursued super hard, is having a book on the New York Times bestseller list. And I don't know why. It's not like it matters to me in the sense that it feels like a loss without it, but it is one of those achievements that I don't know why. I think it's just, here's what I think it is. Now, so this is just me reading into it. I think it's because, even though I've accepted now I'm an author, because that was a struggle for me, Kevin, because I didn't read my first book until age 27. I didn't know the difference between fiction and nonfiction when I graduated. And when I told my mom I wanted to write a book back when I was around 26, she said, I think you have to read one first. And so I wasn't that guy. So I think I fought for a long time the idea of me being an author. So I think what I did, and actually I kind of, instead of being a writer, I kind of said, oh, a best-selling author because I know how to market books. Meaning, like Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad author, says that he's not a best-selling writer; he's a best-selling author because he said my writing's terrible, but I sold a lot of books and they kept become great marketing tools. And I loved that concept, so I think I took that on and said, "Well, I'm not a writer," and I kept pulling that up. Meanwhile, I've written all these songs. I had to write comedy when I got on the stage, and so I wrote this book now, this new one, which is a parable fictional book, and I've had writers like Mark Victor
Let,
Hansen. Oh, go
let
ahead.
me stop. Let me stop you there because I want to segue into that because you are a best-selling author by USA Today in the Wall Street Journal. You have a book that teaches people how to speak on stage and whatever. You cover a lot of things in there. I did read the Enlightened Pastor. I want to play a little game with you, but before you go into that, all right, because like I said, I listened to 53 of your interviews, and I know what's coming next. But I also want my people to know how to get your books, and I'm going to tell you the two books that I've read. They're outstanding. They're a must read. One is fictional, and the other, I forget the title name that you have for the Enlightened Passenger. I forget the official name in that, but the Enlightened Passenger is a must read. And if you don't like to read, I will tell you the reason why you don't like to read is because you have not found a book that you fell in love reading. And the Enlightened Passenger will be that first book. So, Corey, how do people get any of your books?
Okay, so did you want me to finish the dream thing at all in any way, or no? Just jump into the
No,
book.
I want you to finish it, but I want to tell people how to get
Okay.
to the book because I want to go into the Enlightened Passenger of
Okay.
how to do that, and I have a couple more questions. But go ahead and tell people how to get that. And I
Okay.
apologize for interrupting
Oh
you.
no, that's all good.
Okay.
You have a pattern that works, and I want you to continue down that path, right? So like I'm glad you said it there because it's a great time to mention it if we're going to go into the book side. And so that book, the easiest path right now is this is the book. I try to keep it easy. This is the book.com is the website. I will say, Kevin, right now, if somebody goes there as of this minute, they can still get the bonuses we offered during the launch. It's by far not supposed to be still on the website. It's supposed to switch over to where it says, hey, go grab the book here. But I've been too lazy to take it off, and that's been intentional. Lazy with intention, because I'm like, I know I have to take it off, but I'm okay if people still sneak in and get the bonuses. But I don't know when that's going to go. I mean, I probably should do it this week sometime. But anyway, this is thebook.com is where people can get the book. So that's that side. I don't know which other book you meant, so I don't know.
Your speaking book.
Okay, get paid to speak.
Get paid to speak.
Yeah, so that book, that one, there's not really a website set up for it, but people can go to Amazon or there's a website called thebookofpublicspeaking.com, and you can get the digital version for free there of that one.
All right. So in the Enlightened Passenger, we're going to go into that. I do want to ask you a question before you go on to that, because we are examples of reflection of the company we keep. Who are the three people that are closest to you?
Hmm. So now I want to ask you a clarity question around answering this properly. Is this like thought leaders, or is this anybody?
No, this is someone in your personal life that has your ear. It's like I have a select group of people that no matter what conversation or what's going on in my life, I can pick up the phone and says, look, um, it's 2 a.m. I need a couple minutes. Can I talk? All right. I have people like that. Diane Daggett, that used to be the vice president of QVC, she said, if you want to know who your good friends are, and says you're going to have friends, she said, call them up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and just kind of talk to them. All right. She says your good friends, when they hear the stress in your voice without you telling them, will knock on your door at 3:30 in the morning and says, what the hell's going on? She says your friends will wait till they get up in the morning, get to sleep, call the coffee, and whatever case may be, you'll call you and you drive in. She says, when that doorbell rings, she said, plan a party, because those are the people that will ride and die with you. She says, not taking anything away from the other friends, but they're a group of people that no matter what, no matter if you're at the top of your game and no matter if you're at your lowest point, they're the people that is always honest with you. Say, Corey, you're too full of yourself. You need to come down. Corey, you shouldn't do this. And if you do this is going to happen. I got your back. I'm going to be there. I'm your boy. All right. But, I ain't going to stay around to see the carnage. We all have those friends, and hopefully at least have one of them. But I think you've got three, not
Yeah.
the celebrities.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and thanks for the context. That's why I want to ask. And I'm going to also skip and not include my wife because she would be in there. But I want to, give you three answers that are separate from my family, for instance. I think, I'll say, by the way, if I go to like influencers, thought leaders, the guy that wrote the foreword to my book, I feel is that kind of person for me. But at the same time, we're both so busy in our paths, we don't, I guess I'll say lean into that. But so Richard Paul Evans, I feel like is somebody that I met that I feel like would be that. But as far as the three that jumped into my head right away, there's a person named Rosalind Fung, a lady named Emily Harrison, and then there's two here. One is my good friend Denise, but we go through spells where we don't talk that often. But again, same thing. She'd be at the door tomorrow if I needed her to be. If I added a bonus person, it would be Heidi, who's a part of our company and team. But she is that person that, like, if we're running an event or anything, she's like, "Do you need anything? What can I get for you?" She's that person. So like, if I said, "Oh my gosh, something happened to Shelly," let's say my wife's cousin, she'd be like, "Do you need me to fly down there?" Like, so she is that person. And Rosalind and Emily, like if I send a message, they'll say, "Yeah, but how are you?" Like, but how are you? Like those type of people. So when you say it that way, those are the people that jumped into my head right away. So there's kind of four, I guess.
Well, I do that because sometimes we don't give the people that are behind the scenes that hold us up, that we lean on, we don't give them their roses. In my neighborhood, it's called giving them roses. I mean, it's funny. When I showed your picture to someone in my household, they asked me, goes, "Why do you only interview Black people?" And I said, "Corey's my brother." So I do want to ask this because this is something that I teach podcasting at Cheney University. I'm going to be doing another historically Black colleges. This was asked to me by a child. He says, "Why did God give us two arms, two hands with 10 fingers, two legs with 2 feet, one head, one brain, and one heart?"
Wow, I have no idea on this. I was thinking you were going to go with like the two ears and one mouth.
No,
But that's a different answer.
All right, and the reason why I asked that because I know after listening to 53 interviews is that I said I at least got to ask one question that no one has ever asked you, and when someone asked me, it's like as a podcaster, you have to become a professional listener. And you always have to be a student of life. One of the things is when I'm coaching, I always ask if the ocean comes to the beach or does the beach come to the ocean? And it depends on the wave. And sometimes it's a storm and sometimes it's calm water. And so when I thought about that, and the original title to this show is Understanding the Power of No. So if you would outstretch both your hands and your feet and draw a line around it, a white chalk line, it looks like a star. And I always ask people, "Are you ready to be a star?" And so basically, when I look at the tip of the head and where your head and your brain is, that's where love and passion reside. Your right hand, be it right hand, left hand, whatever your dominant hand is, everything that you reach is touches something you have created. Your left hand is your support. That's where gratitude lies. Your right leg, whatever your dominant, we step either with the right or the left. Okay. Every step you take takes you to something, someplace you want to go, and that's what courage. The second position of your feet, when you join them together, that's where compassion. That's what you stand on. That's what you believe in, and join together. That becomes part of your purpose. Now, the one thing that we forget when you talk about the one heart, your heart is where love is, but it's also where you become optimistic when you believe that anything is possible. And I want to know, do you believe that everything is possible?
Okay, this is fascinating in a way because I can give you two answers, right? I can give the answer of whenever we talk about like, can you achieve anything you want? I am a believer that so this is where I'm at. Almost anything is possible. And the reason I say this, so I want to preface this. So yes, I believe it in the context that most people mean it when they say, "Do you believe everything's impossible? I'm possible," that type of stuff. Yes. However, I'm also a practical person. I always say I'm a recovering spiritual skeptic. So I'm also a practical person. And so whenever we say anything, I'm not, I have to say, Kevin, I struggle sometimes with absolutes. So when we say anything, I have to go, okay, it's not a pessimist, but like the realist in me says, well, I don't believe. Now, I believe if people believe in astral projection, I believe you can astral projection up to the moon and back. But I don't believe physically yet, I'm not saying it won't change, that you can stand in front of me and I can watch your physical body fly up to the moon and back without anything helping you. So if you say anything, I still think there's some things that aren't possible, but I think most people when they say it, they mean like that I can achieve anything, I can do anything that I set my mind to. If I look at it that way, then yes, I believe that. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. Corey, how do people get in touch with you and how do they hire you to be a speaker?
You know what? I'm going to give the easiest path because I find when we give too many, well, they say, what do they say? A confused mind does nothing. So I'm going to just say one way to reach me, easiest way, simplest possible way. Send me an email. I know that's not normal these days, but send me an email at Corey, Corey, at BLU, talks with an S on the end, .com. So Corey at bluetalks.com. Easiest way to do all of those things.
All right. So, Corey, this is the way my head works. And this is when you live with a TBI. I look at it as entertainment when I have this. But I couldn't think of the word earlier because my brain functions. You ever see the movie The Matrix?
Yes.
That's the way my head is all the time. It used to bother me when I was originally diagnosed because I got a concussion, got hit in the head with a dumbbell and forgot everyone. But I want to talk about the enlightened passenger. And I want to play a little bit what it's a parable. I couldn't think of the name before because the way my brain works, I saw the name, but my mouth said, I dare you to say it. And so I have my own stand-up room and it's crowded and I'm killing it inside my head, but my mouth is never going to say it. So it's a parable. It's a little bit of you and it's a little bit of your life experience of a guy that's sitting on a plane. He has purchased a seat and the seat next to him. And somehow when he opens his eyes from his short nap, it's me sitting beside him. No, that's not the book. Okay. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about the enlightened passenger.
Well, you did sum it up quite well. It's just I didn't know you yet when I wrote it, so it wasn't you sitting beside him. But you did summarize the I'll call it the not synopsis, but the plot basically. But yeah, it's the gist is two strangers on a plane end up sitting next to each other. As you said, one person bought the seat next to him because he didn't want to. Okay, so I have to say this. Both passengers are a little bit of me. And so I was a business person in sales when I was younger, and I didn't understand personal development. I didn't know that there was anything new to learn. I thought I figured it all out. And when I was on a plane, I didn't want to talk to anybody. Like I was that person. So that's kind of, I wrote it as the person I was with, and then now the person I'm hoping I'm becoming. But that younger guy is a business person. He makes good money, but he also spends good money. And he paid for the seat next to him because he wanted to get work done. Fell asleep, as you said, wakes up. There's an older guy named Treb sitting next to him. And Treb's like the, cheery guy. Hey, how's it going? Just like one of those people it's hard to get mad at, as you said earlier. And basically, Robert, the younger passenger, doesn't want to spend any time next to him, doesn't want to talk to him, but he catches wind that maybe Treb has made some money. And he's like, oh, maybe I can figure out how this old guy's made that money so I can make some of that too. And that's what makes him finally listen to him. And then it turns into almost like Think and Grow Rich, the book. So at first you're thinking it's about becoming rich financially, but really it's about how do I become rich as a person, much like Think and Grow Rich did in terms of helping people become rich as a person. That's the premise. And then the flight becomes the 10 lessons that Treb teaches Robert based on Treb's life journey, which, as you elegantly pointed out earlier, is really my life journey. It's a fictionalized version of my life. And those 10 lessons, what I think the behind the scenes story that people wouldn't know is they are based on those thousands of interviews, what I've learned in those interviews. And I asked myself, what are the 10 things as I was coming up with them that if my kids were in a room with me for 24 hours and I can only teach them 10 things, what are the 10 things I would leave them with? And because of that, Kevin, some things got moved out of the book in place of other things because it needed to feel like it was the 10 things that changed my life enough that I'd want my children to know. So that's kind of where the 10 lessons came from. And like I said, it's just the journey of those two guys in a flight, basically one reluctantly learning from the other one and the other one joying in being able to share and impart the wisdom he's learned over the years.
And, it is a great read, and the reason why I laugh because when I first read it, I knew it was you. And the funny thing is, I was actually, but I didn't want to offend you because I know how some people are sensitive. I like to write. I'm probably the only author that probably can say that I almost graduated from college and not being able to read or write. And Sherry Wells, thank you. She's passed on, but she was kind enough to take time to teach me how to write. And the book that I wrote in Wesley Hall at Central State University became a bestseller, and it's now being converted over to a animated Christmas story called Sprinkles of True Spirit of Christmas. So I was going to write me as that person and role play with you in there, which I like to do. I get a little sense of humor, and to see how the enlightened passenger meeting Kevin McLemore, how would that work out?
Well, I think, well, here, okay, so you said a key thing there too, Kevin, is the enlightened passenger. So here's the question I'll pose to you in answering that question, but who really is the enlightened passenger? So this is a question people have asked me because the book was written with the intention, and the title was written with the intention of not actually really defining who the enlightened passenger is. So, for example, is it Robert, the younger guy in the plane who's becoming more enlightened on the flight? Or is it Treb, the enlightened older passenger who's more enlightened already? Or is it the reader who's becoming more enlightened as they're reading it? Or is it the person that grabs the book and hands it to somebody else, and they're the passenger for the book to get to somebody else? So I'll re-ask that question: is who really is the enlightened passenger? But let's say Kevin was sitting next to, because this way it depends on which way we look at it. Is Kevin sitting next to the younger guy who needs the wisdom and insight, or is Kevin sitting next to the older, wiser guy who's sharing the insight?
I would probably be sitting with the guy that needs the insight, because the education that I would give to him is the same thing that you touched upon a little bit in the book. Everyone, and I've said this before, one of the most successful books that's ever been written is How to Win Friends and Influence People, and the other was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And everyone that's bought the book, why did they buy the book? Because they were thinking, how much money can I make? He has sold millions of copies, and people don't realize at the time that he wrote that book, 90% of the books that were ever published by a branded publisher failed. And he had to order a couple thousand books. I think it was 1,000 books of his own in order to do it. And it took off. And what people don't realize is what is success. It's not your bank account. It's the experiences in life and the people that you affect in it. And so when I looked at it and I said, this would be funny, if I sat beside this person and took his seat, and I was supposed to be in business class or coach, and we had this conversation. And I'm actually surprised that you came up with 8 lessons of life, because I study human behavior, and the top motivational speakers or inspirational. What do you call yourself as a speaker? I know I hate the word motivational speaker, because I think the only way you could be motivated or be motivated by someone if you're ready to make a move. What do you call yourself?
Honestly, and it's not sexy at all. But whenever people say, like, if they said, fill out this form, what do you do for a living? And I've evolved kind of in a different direction now, so it'd be a different answer. But for the years that I was out speaking on the road, much like Les, I would have said professional speaker. Now, I'm not saying that's sexy or the right answer. The one term I like is I'm an edutainer. It's kind of a cute little term. But honestly, if you ask me, like, Corey, gun to head, what did you say whenever people say, what do you do for a living? I'd say professional speaker. My thinking behind that is I really like the professional side, because I felt like I'm making a living doing this while impacting lives, and I take it serious like a profession. So I liked it that way, because I felt motivational speaker, to your point about just even going to the root of the word motivation. Am I really motivating them? You could then make the argument, okay, you're an inspirational speaker. But for me, I looked at it like, also, I felt like a motivational speaker was like, we're hiring the juggler to come in. And I don't think that's not even a knock, but the entertainer to come in. And like, it didn't feel like people took it serious. Like, it's like, oh, we're hiring them for motivation, so they got to come in and rah us. And like, I think of Tony Robbins. I don't think that's what Tony Robbins does, but I think that's what 99% of the world thinks Tony Robbins does. Tony Robbins works with NLP and everything else and behavioral stuff, and has studied all this stuff. Yet he's kind of been like, he's the guy that comes in and goes, you can do it. And so I struggle with that, to be honest, Kevin. And like I said, I think like the entertainer that comes in, if you're like the juggler, like if somebody says we're bringing a juggler in, it doesn't sound as good as we're bringing in an entertainer for our event. So for me, I think words matter, and so that's why I always thought professional speaker sounded much better than motivational speaker.
And that's the reason why on my end I say I'm a mindset professional, and my gig is I talk about the power of your words, because if it hadn't been someone pouring a conversation into me when I was ready to receive it, I would not be here today. So with that said, um, I don't know if I told you this. I have a list in my life of 100 of the top um, people that are influencers that are making a difference in life. And that I'm going to ask you to share your secrets to success. And I know what the average motivational speaker or speaker, whatever, there's 23, 24 adjectives or emotions that are in every single speech. And I know you've said you listed 10 inside your book. I have 8 for my book, Indispensable Games. Share us the secret to your successful life, not to your business career, to a successful life. I want people to live a good life. I love that company, Life is Good, because it exemplifies how simple it is. I think I shared with you some pictures. I went to Pikes Peak and I was afraid of heights. And when I got there, I said, you know something, I'm going to walk to the edge. And when I saw what God had built, and looked over and I could see Kansas from 14,000 feet up in the air, I said, what do I have to be afraid of? All right. This is what God created. And believe it or not, when I talk about a gift, God gave me you. God gave me you to help someone that's listening to this podcast to get off their butt and do something with their life, no matter what the excuse. So if you don't mind, I'd like to be honored to have you enlist your name as the top 100 people that are listed with their secrets to a successful life. Would you share those with us, Corey?
Wow. So because again, this is all intuition, so none of this was planned. I didn't have pre-questions, which I love, but this is a big question. So because I want to really share what I think ultimately has had the biggest impact. And so if I think a couple of lessons, well, one I've shared a lot throughout this interview, you could probably go back and say it was part of a theme, is about vitamin P. So finding meaning in your life and purpose, I think is, well, not only will I say, Kevin, is it a secret? Here's the cool part. I'll back this up by a study. I've interviewed 7+ thousand people, and I've asked them questions around purpose and passion. Whenever people say to me, what are the most common traits they share, or what are the most common habits, I could list them, but I'm just going to tell you the number one by far is that they live every day on purpose. They figured out what they're called to do and they live it every day. So obviously, I think that's a secret to success, is uncovering what you were called to do and living that way every day. Bob Dylan had a great quote. He said, if a man, and I'll add in, or a woman, can wake up every night, and in between those hours of waking up and going to sleep, they can do that which they love, they are a success. And to me, even though he was talking about success, to me, that's living a purpose-filled life, to quote a book's title. So on one hand, I would say that, but if I go even a step further, because that's something I shared throughout, so let me share something I didn't. Neil Donald Walsh, who wrote the book Conversations with God, has this quote that I quote all the time. He said, life begins at the end of your comfort zone. And so another secret to me, to both success and life, is to figure out where your comfort zone is and to find a way to move beyond that comfort zone, to expand it. So when I started my journey, my comfort zone was like it was like a marble. And, now it's like the Grand Canyon. And I don't say that flippantly. I say it took a long time to get there. But what I can tell you is that my life would not be what it's been, not even like a fraction of what it's been. And I feel like it's been a meaningful life if I had stayed within my comfort zone. So figuring out what your comfort zone is, figuring out how to get outside it, and then stepping outside your comfort zone, I really believe is a key to living a fulfilling life. I don't know. I think it'll probably lead to living a successful life as well. But for sure, I believe a fulfilling life. I think if you kind of sit in what that little tiny comfort zone is your whole life, you haven't really lived. And that's, it's a cold statement because I don't want anybody to think they're failing, but I think we can all have a redo tomorrow. We can start over tomorrow. But I do believe that getting outside your comfort zone is where real life begins to happen. What the true you, the person you are called to be, is outside that comfort zone. So get outside that comfort zone, figure out what you were called to do, and spend more of your time doing it. I could probably go into 3 or 4 more, but I think those are two, for me, those have been two major keys for me to living a fulfilling and successful life.
All right. And Corey, one more time. How do people get in touch with you and how do they get your books?
Okay, so the touch with me part, Corey at bluetalks.com, and it's spelled Corey. So I got the E in there, and then the blue is without the E. So at blue talks with an S on the end.com. So Corey at bluetalks.com. I never knew, by the way, and noticed, Kevin, until I just said that moment, that Corey is often spelled without the E and blue is with the E. And I got the opposite going on there. So that'll help people remember the email address. To get the new book, The Enlightened Passenger, it's at thisisthebook.com. And depending on when you go there, you may get the bonuses. And then finally, if you want the Get Paid to Speak book, if that's kind of your thing, you want to start getting paid to speak or build an expert business or whatever that looks like for you, you can get that at thebookofpublicspeaking.com. You'll get a free digital version, or you can buy a copy on Amazon. So that's a lot of links at once.
And I will tell you, Corey is the captain of the ship when it comes to connecting people. I want to thank Stacey Lawrence for introducing the two of us. She is another connector of people. I don't believe that in this day and age that any of us can do this thing that we call success or life alone. We have to surround ourselves and connect ourselves with good people. And how you get lifted up is by the people you bring up with you. And Corey, you are an amazing person. And I'm hoping that this is not one and done as far as interview. And I hope that, within the next 2 or 3 interviews, because I know your journey is only beginning, that I can actually come on and say that I'm one of those friends instead of being a soundbite for someone that cannot pronounce your last name. And I think I've got it right because I know how people screw up Macklemore, and I'm okay. I've gotten used to it. As long as they call me for dinner, not late, I'm fine with that. What do you want people to take away from this interview, Corey?
Well, and talking about being kindred spirits, I always say too, like, people can call me Chris as long as they really truly mean to be speaking to me. I don't care if they call me Chris instead of Corey. That I've never cared about that, which is kind of interesting because you referenced Dale Carnegie earlier, and he said the most powerful word in the English language to the average person is the sound of their own name.
You're exactly right.
And for me, by the way, I kind of counter that in my book and say the most powerful word, maybe this is the takeaway. So when you said, what would I like to lead people with? I say in the book, the most powerful word to me, in my experience, is mindset. Because it for everybody, it impacts them. So the sound of your own name, you and I don't care as much if they say it or pronounce it right. So I would say there's not large, but there's a percentage of people that don't. But mindset, none of us can get past. If you don't have the right mindset, the wrong things happen. If you have the wrong mindset, the wrong things happen. And so I believe mindset's where it all begins. There'd be a whole other conversation about how do you build the right mindset. But I think at the end of the day, if you understand that mindset's really one of the only things you have control over, just like your own decisions, but mindset's one of the only things you have control over. And the fact that you get to create your mindset, curate your mindset, and change it if you need to, I believe is such a big gift. I know not everybody gets that, but again, since I mentioned the most powerful word, I think understanding mindset and what you can do with it is one of those powerful things you can do with your life. So A, I said earlier, figure out your purpose. There's lots of ways to do that. And B, set your mind on what it takes to live a fulfilling life and watch the magic happen.
All right. And I'm going to ask a small favor since you harped on mindset so much. Back in the day when my football career ended, I used to have a medallion on. You see all NFL players and college players, they have this big medallion on. Mine used to say, "Attitude is everything, dreamer," and I had a couple of diamonds on it. And I had the 2 faces of tragedy and parody on it because I firmly believe in order for life to get easier, it has to be difficult at first. Every storm, there's a calmness to the storm. So anytime anything gets harder, you think it's impossible, something becomes possible for you. But I want to say this. There's 2 people that you're connected with that I want to get a message to. Tell Dan Sullivan he's killing my thing. Because I always said when I'm speaking, I have the mindset of a defensive back. I have neutral thinking. He created something that would have made he kills my speaking career because he created a book. I don't know if you read it, Gap in the Game.
I know the book. I haven't read it. I should put that on my list.
You have to read it because everything that you and I do, and when we're talking about the mindset and whatever, he has simplified it. The things that you have control over is called the gain. The things you have no control over is the gap. He's just put me out of business. When I talk about mindset, when I talk about the 8 and 10, things that changed my life playing high school football and how I became the top producer at the health club that I'm at and whatever. The attitude is definitely everything. I am so honored and pleased to have you. So when you get to Dan, tell him Kevin wants to speak to him. The other person is Gary V. All right, because you referenced him a couple of times about, jab, 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 and right hook or left hook or whatever case may be. People won't understand until you read the book. And I suggest that be added to your reading list so you'll understand when you meet someone like Corey, because everyone wants to be on your show, but someone's got to give something to get something and whatever. And we've got to earn your respect, earn your time because your time is valuable. And I appreciate the time that you have spent with me and my audience. I hope my audience takes a little bit of something away from Corey and add to it. Like I said, the interview is conversational with us. I've had a great time, Corey. I can't wait to do it again. Go out and do something great again. I can't wait to see, I'm not going to mention your kids by name, but I know the 7's going to turn into 8, 8's going to turn into 12, 12 is going to become 16. And before you know it, you're going to have 2 kids that bear your name, going to be upstaging dad, and you're going to sit back and you're going to enjoy it. I had a 7-year-old kid, and this is from the mouth of babes. The other day, I asked his mother how she was doing. She was fine. I bent over to say to him, said, "How are you doing?" He says, "I am living my best life." And so from a 7-year-old to learning what's taught and what's caught from your parents, I commend the parents for having a healthy mental environment to that young child. And I know your house is filled with that. And I thought you were going to say when I asked, I forgot to ask you what was your favorite thing in the house. I figured your son was going to say your telephone. So hopefully that's not the right answer. Corey, you are the best of the best. I am so glad that I met you. My listeners, if you like what you've heard, go to RMK Productions and Network on our YouTube page and copy and paste, share this interview with your friends. If you got someone that's sitting on the fence that can't figure out what to do and they have failure to launch, listen to Corey Poirier. Read one of his books. Everything is possible because it started out something impossible. And like I said, go to his website, buy The Enlightened Passenger. It is a great read. It is a great read. It does take you out. Corey, is there anything that I missed in this interview you'd like to share with us?
I think the only thing is you missed the fact that we talked about it already, but I want to bring you on to my show in the very near future. And you've, I think, given me the approach I want to take because we have 2 different shows and one's The Enlightened Passenger. And now I think I want to take the approach of you being the enlightened passenger for the full episode.
All right, no problem. I'm ready for it. Corey, I do want to ask one thing because I know I titled the show The Power of No. And I know if you read the interview, the bottom of my email, I always say you are only the strongest. You're only as strong as your last no. Today, I had to drop 2 people that were riding in my dream that were dragging their feet on their own. What is the power of no?
Ultimately, and you probably can tell I like to, because I've done so many interviews, I like to back this stuff up. So I like to study this. And I feel like I've done a bigger study than the Nielsen ratings do whenever they study homes, because I don't think they study 7,000 homes. And the power of no is basically my discovery. So I'll say, here's how it came to life. My discovery about the fact that most influencers, people that are impacting a lot of lives, say no way more than the average person. So that was a big discovery for me because I grew up in a small town. I came back to the small town, but I grew up in a small town where I was kind of taught that you say yes to everybody and then figured how to squeeze it all in, which is these days a recipe for burnout, on and on, like burnout, insanity, doing too much, overwhelm. And so for me, what I discovered is no should really be the new yes. And so the power of no is recognizing how powerful it is to be able to figure out exactly what you should be doing and say no to almost everything that doesn't align with what you should be doing. That's it in the kind of a nutshell.
All right, so we can talk all day long, and it could be a 3 hour, 3 week show. Matter of fact, it could be a variety show. So, with that said, my grandfather always said, when you get to a place in life that you can help someone else out, he said it's your duty to do so. He said, reach one, teach one. And with that said, we'll fade to black and we're out. Corey Portier, thank you for being an enlightened guest on our show.
Thank you so much, Kevin. It's been a pleasure.